Next up, we have bylaws and platform proposals. And so what we'd like to do, I'm going to switch the screen to those. We're going to start with a platform proposal from Mary O'Connor. And so what I'd like to do is whoever suggested the platform or bylaw change, I want them to talk about it versus me because they know why they want this to change. So Mary, you're first up.
Thank you. You'll see on the page that was handed out, and it was emailed also ahead of time, that I would like to delete number 10 of the platform, which is children's and dependents' rights. And I would like to replace it with the National Party's platform that is called parental rights. And I put copies of that on the table. In the center of the table, there's several copies of the National Party's parental rights article. And that's, well, basically, I believe parents have the right to rear their children as they see fit. I'd say till the age of 18, but I don't know if there's any age on here. So that is what I would recommend. First of all, deleting our Article 10, children and dependents' rights, and replacing with parental rights from the National Party.
Any questions for Mary?
What's
Mason?
your main issue with the current platform, I guess?
Government does like to interfere in family lives and take children away from their parents quite readily and easily, and I certainly don't agree with that. But I think parents, after they have children, they have the right and the responsibility to rear those children. So I think it's best if they do that until a certain age, like probably 18, maybe 16, and that children shouldn't have their own rights to, I don't know, rear themselves.
Yeah, so, sorry, to keep just asking. So, in terms of the repealing status offenses, is that different than parental rights? Or could this be just an addition? Or do we have to also delete that we want to get rid of the status offenses?
That maybe would have to be added because I don't see it in the national platform.
Right.
So they don't really talk about it in the national platform, but they do say that, that the rights of children to be free from abuse and neglect are protected. Yeah, that's possible that should be part of our platform. So that would be, we accordingly call for the repeal of all juvenile status offenses such as truancy, underage smoking, curfews, etc. So we could say that, so the government wouldn't have rights over the children, but the parents would still have some rights and responsibilities.
Yeah, so your proposal here is to delete the entire platform.
Yes, it was.
Your handout says you want to replace it with 1.6
Yes.
from national.
Yes, that is something I thought about since I first, made the proposal.
So to Mason's point, is your idea to
My
blend them together?
point was that I think keeping the juveniles free from government coercion might want to stay on our platform, but I agree that it's ambiguously worded enough that it might seem that we're saying that parents don't have the right to discipline their children in any way. And I think that maybe that's what Mary's addressing here by replacing it with 1.6, in that parents should be allowed to raise their children as they see fit at their rights. So I was trying to propose possibly that this is more of an addendum and possibly bracket in the word free of government coercion and whether that would satisfy her objections. Does that make sense?
I would prefer just adding the second sentence of our current platform to the Libertarian National Platform on parental rights.
So then it would read, parents or other guardians have the right to raise their children according to their own standards and beliefs, provided that the rights of children to be free from abuse and neglect are also protected. Space, We accordingly call for the repeal of all juvenile status offenses such as truancy, underage smoking, curfews, etc., in that that would take away parental rights to govern how they raise their children.
Yeah, so we're kind of adding some children rights to the parental rights.
Eric, I think Eric is.
Mhm.
I think this needs more work. It feels like we've got a fragmented proposal to delete something, and then later we're saying replace it with something, and we're modifying the replacement, and taking two decks and shuffling them together. And
Mhm.
I'm going to admit I'm not at all clear on what we would be voting on if we were voting on something. So I really feel like this needs more work.
Michael's got a comment.
I want to throw something else out. If there's a marriage license involved, that marriage license specifically states that the product of that relationship is property of the state. So parents technically do not, actually legally, jurisdictionally, do not have the right to determine the direction of their children. That comes fully under the jurisdiction of the state. So it should be reworded maybe where, we oppose the contractual obligation of the marriage license. Something like that.
Well, we could have our own beliefs and platform even if the government has different ones.
Correct. That's something that we need to be aware of.
Yes, we do. I didn't realize that.
Any further questions, comments? Otherwise, Mary, would you like to officially then propose with some modified language here? So we'll need a motion and a second and then vote. And it requires a 2/3 majority to pass.
Well, what are we voting on?
Well, that's, again, up to Mary again
We're
to
asking her
then,
to tell us.
to re-propose the final thing that we would vote on.
Well, I would like that second sentence to be in our platform somewhere. I don't know that it belongs under parental rights. Maybe we could keep children's rights in number 10 and just delete the first sentence and delete the last sentence and just keep, we call for the repeal of all juvenile status offenses such as truancy, underage smoking, and curfews, and leave that as number 10. So that's what I would propose or move. And then after we do that, after we vote on that, then I'll move that we add parental rights as another platform, probably number 11, and then we'd have to renumber our platform. So let's start with number 10, children's and dependents' rights. We call for the repeal of all juvenile status offenses such as truancy, underage smoking, curfew, etc.
So that's,
So clarify maybe.
Yeah. so basically, we're taking the current 10, we're leaving 10 in place, but we're stripping it down, taking out the first part, leaving the second, stripping out the third. So the sentence that says, we would drop accordingly because it now has no reference, but we would say, we call for the repeal of all juvenile status offenses such as truancy, underage smoking, curfews, etc. And that would be the entire section 10 is Mary's proposal. And so I'm assuming that's your motion. Does anybody want to second that motion?
I second.
And seconded. Any additional discussion?
Well, how put it, there's a lot of conflict with the concept of children's rights and parents' rights. I mean, like something that was in the news recently was a 7-year-old has decided that instead of being male, he wants to be female. And they're giving him hormone treatments, which, the parents are totally opposed to, but they said it's the right of the child. I mean, there's a big conflict.
Mhm. Yeah. So do you want to just make that statement, or do you want to try
I
and
just
do a
make a
friendly
statement.
amendment to this, or?
And, Sharon Harris, or whatever it was, who wrote the answering the tough questions and so forth, she got ridiculed by the media for her stand on the children's rights. I mean, basically, she said you can divorce your parents.
My question here is, we have two different things we're addressing. One is addressing children's rights, one is addressing parental rights.
So we're-
It
parental
almost
rights-
seems like we should have, bullet point for each one.
Yeah, so parental rights is not on the floor right now.
Is that in our state platform under a different number?
No.
Okay.
But that will be
We
a,
already talked about adding it as a new platform.
but that will be a separate.
But what I'm saying is instead of deleting the children's rights, maybe we add the parental
Yeah.
rights.
Yeah.
We're proposing to delete
We're modifying.
children's rights due to the ambiguity of the first
Right.
sentence.
So we're just
So then it'll
modifying.
say
the
children's
existing.
rights, independence rights, and parental rights will be
Well,
the title of the.
The current proposal is just to leave this as children independence and then just reduce the language. So the current proposal on the floor does not address parental rights yet.
Yeah.
And that can be a second proposal. Okay?
So for clarity, the proposal would delete the first sentence and probably delete the word accordingly. also.
Correct, and then delete the last sentence. Hey, there it goes.
You're deleting the last sentence.
Mm-hmm. It's a second paragraph. That's that sentence.
And we support the efforts of parents and there.
So just another point to bring up.
Yes.
Is the line where it says neglect or abuse. That could get a little contentious with things like cultural practices such as female genital mutilation.
So is this from the national platform?
Yeah, this is the
Yeah.
next proposal.
Yep. Okay,
We're not.
just want to clarify. Yeah. So as of right now, that language is not in Mary's current
Okay, yeah.
proposal.
I'll vote for that.
Perfect, thank you. With no further comment, again, it's been motioned and seconded to basically keep 10 in place and essentially only keep the second sentence and drop the word accordingly so that it makes sense. All in favor of that, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
And keep your hand up. Okay, opposed, say nay. All right, did we have some people leave the room? Or has anybody not, did anybody abstain? That I didn't see hands.
I abstain.
Okay,
I abstain.
okay. So therefore, it does not pass because we didn't reach 2/3. Because abstain is essentially the same as a no because the yeses are what matter. So that proposal does not pass. Mary, do you want to introduce the second part of your parental reference?
Yes, I would like to add parental rights platform.
Okay, so
Number 11.
A separate section?
Yeah, number 11.
Okay, so Mary, I'll let you discuss it further, but essentially, we have more than 11 platform points already, so I believe what Mary is talking about is introducing an 11 and then just renumbering current 11 and on by one each to do the sequencing. So I'll let you talk about what your proposal is.
My proposal comes from the national platform, and it's parental rights, and it says parents or other guardians have the right to raise their children according to their own standards and beliefs, provided that the rights of children to be free from abuse and neglect are also protected.
So I wanted to go back to my point. Where do we, as a society, draw that line? What is considered by some people a cultural tradition, and by other people would be considered, permanently altering somebody's body in a negative way. Where does that line from abuse to cultural sensitivity, where do we cross that line? What's considered abuse and what's not considered abuse?
Yes, I don't know. We could delete that last part of the sentence and not mention that at all, that the rights of children to be free from abuse and neglect are protected.
And then also, like neglect is, some people would argue strenuously that not getting your children vaccinated is neglect, where other people would say that you know, just because I did not have, you know, chickenpox vaccine on my children, that's not neglect. And that's, I'd say that's very contentious. And also interpreted to broad interpretation by a large number of people, both for and against. So that's just my bringing up a point that I think that, you know, could be used against us by some people.
If we deleted it, then it'd be okay then. We wouldn't have any contention. Kara?
That's the same ambiguity that we have anytime we mention violence. We don't define every violent act and say what is violent and what isn't. We don't define every case of fraud, this is fraudulent, this is not. And there is ambiguity in that. And people have different opinions on that. But that doesn't mean that we don't frame it and say it, you know, just because there's ambiguity. We wouldn't strike mentions of fraud from our platform just because people might disagree on what that is. So I just caution on that.
And Mark?
I don't believe we take stand on freedom just because we might scare people off for political reasons. I don't think we should ever temper stand on personal freedom just because some people might be upset. Parental rights and what they do with their children is up to them. We don't invade other countries that practice cumulative mutilation to prevent the act, though some people might want us to. Nobody has this, and I think every time we practice that principle, we may rail against it, but that's okay, that's our right to do so. We're going to go invading their homes and stuff.
Well, I would is there another one?
Yeah,
Chris?
I just want to say, I tentatively agree with what Hans is saying. My issue with this is, provided that the rights of children are to be free from abuse, when people have their children taken away by the government now for spanking, which, I mean, I got my ass whooped when I was a kid.
Wait, but look how this turned out.
Right. Good point. Maybe we should. I just don't like having a clause that could be interpreted as the government can take me from my parents because my parents spanked me and disciplining me.
Well, I would then like to put the period after beliefs and delete the last part of that platform. So just say parents or other guardians have the right to raise their children according to their own standards and beliefs.
I would have a concern about that too, because we do need to assert the rights of children in care to, they have individual rights as well. So I think there is, unfortunately, some situations where parental abuse can cross a line where, unfortunately, separation is in order. But I understand we can't really be too specific because that's open to so much. But I think the ideal platform would recognize both parental rights and that children have individual rights as well to be free from abuse. So.
And we would have that if we would have both.
I think for that reason alone, my preference would be if we are to adopt a national language, that we keep it in full as it's written.
Say that again?
I guess my preference would be if we are to adopt a national language, it remain in full with mentions on both sides of parents and children, recognizing both have individual rights.
Well, we would be doing that because we're keeping 10 of our platform.
Yes, so, that is true. Do not consider that. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments, considerations before? Yes, Kara?
Yeah, but 10, although it says that, there's nothing in there that says that children should not be abused. Which, I mean, that's a pretty damn low bar, right? I don't think we're going so far out on a limb to just say abusing kids is bad. But because there's nothing in 10 that speaks to that. It says free of coercion, but that's not saying anything about abuse or anything like that. So that's my thing, is that 10 doesn't cover that.
Well, and essentially, Kara, to your point, the second part, which says protect their dependents from force or fraud, if the parents are the ones committing the force, we've got a little bit of a
Yeah.
circular reference there.
Yeah.
Yes?
I would echo Kara's statement that it's important to both make the statement, but I think it's also safe to make the statement within the platform, because it's a platform, so we're not exactly a criminal code. So, that's, I agree with that part of the statement.
Keeping the second part of the national platform?
I just want to say inherently there is a tremendous conflict between children's rights and parental rights. And we'll probably never solve that.
You didn't solve it in our house. So Mary, do you want to make an official motion for language?
I would still like to delete the last part of the national platform and put the period after beliefs.
So you're
And-
saying add that to ours?
Yes, as number 11, yes.
Because we aren't here to modify the national platform quite.
No,
Okay.
We're changing it to for our platform.
Correct. I just wanted to be clear.
okay.
Fine, there, it's correctly for our.
So Mary, can you read then what you would like the actual insertion to be?
Yes, I'd like it to be number 11 in our platform, and I'd like it to be called parental rights, and I would like it to say, parents or other guardians have the right to raise their children according to their own standards and beliefs,
Period. That's it.
period.
Okay. So that's the motion.
I guess personally, I would just say I'm not going to vote for that if it stops at that point in the sentence, but I would be open to voting for it if it continues, just because of saying the general
Yep.
statement is against.
So what we'll do is, so if there's a motion, if we have a second, then you can amend friendly, whatever. Is there a second to Mary's motion?
Second.
So it's been seconded. Now, any comments, friendly amendments?
I guess I already
Yep.
said it.
So the amendment would be to continue the entire section that's currently on the national platform. And Mary, is that acceptable to you?
Could we
Yes.
add that sentence into the children's rights portion instead?
That's a good idea.
Children's dependents and parents' rights.
Yeah. That the children have the right to be free from abuse.
Okay.
It's not a parent's right.
Yeah.
It puts a limitation on parents' rights.
Yeah.
But I think it could be in there, absolutely.
Okay, so as I'm hearing now, the friendly amendment would be that we would insert parental rights as a new number 11, renumber everything below that sequentially. 11 would say, parents or other guardians have the right to raise their children according to their own standards and beliefs, period. In addition, we would then modify number 10 to add that the rights of children to be free from abuse and neglect are protected. That's what you're saying?
That's my friendly
Okay.
amendment.
Yes.
I think 1.6 in the national was written away it is very much on purpose with a statement of the parent's right with an added limitation. And that was done very much on purpose, and it's all part of a single sentence.
Okay.
And the fact that it's part of a single sentence, I believe, is very much intentional. And if we split that apart, we lose that.
Okay. So I'll go back to you, Mary, with the commentary that's on the floor right now. Do you want your motion to stay as stated, or do you want to modify it?
I want it to stay as stated and then add that part onto number 10, children's rights.
Okay.
And would that be a single motion, or would that be two motions?
We can do that as a single motion to modify two sections simultaneously.
And I would recommend that on number 10, it says, children and others who are dependent have the same right to be free of coercion as all other people, and free from abuse and neglect. Something, yeah.
And again, I really feel like we've got more work to do on this if we were gonna do something on it, because you can't just take the second half of the sentence and put it somewhere, because it says, provided the rights of children to be free from abuse and neglect are also protected. Being broken apart from the one sentence means that it no longer directly reflects upon the first half of the sentence, and we lose that.
I think it would be better in our platform to have both children's rights and parents' rights. If we have it as it is now with just children's rights, then I think, we're not doing a good job, because I think parents do have their rights. So I'd like at least both of them in there in some fashion. Yes.
Would it perhaps be in order to maybe in the second part of the proposed parental rights, with just the first sentence in there, making it reference back to the child rights platform? Because my concern is that if you read the one sentence as it is, parents or other guardians have the rights to raise their children according to their own standards and beliefs, period, means there is no condition on parental rights, which I'm not sure I'm quite all the way there, because there are abusive parents. So I think there should be a condition that parental rights only extends to the point where they recognize children's rights. So maybe adding a sentence to at least make it dependent on what we're comfortable with language in point 10, the child rights plan. Just by
It comes right after that one, is number 11, right after, so I think people would see them both.
I get that. I'm a little leery of that sentence sitting on its own, how that can be interpreted.
I mean, not to obsess about sentence structure, but for example, if you look at the Second Amendment, it's written in two parts, very much on purpose. And the reason and the way that it's written is why efforts to strike it down have been unsuccessful, and that was on purpose. And that sentence structure is very important. And if you break those two things apart, you must.
Karen?
What if we just have 10 and it says children's and parents' rights? And we put the language from both of them as currently stated together. First part is exactly how 10 reads. Second part is exactly how national has the parental rights.
I would agree with that.
Okay, so Mary, would you like to modify your proposal?
Yes.
Okay, so my motion would be that we have as number 10 titled Children and Parents Parental Rights. The language in 10 is kept as is, but added to it is the language in full from the National Parental Rights Amendment.
I agree.
So,
Okay, and that is
And
sound.
it's all one.
See, that sounds very promising. And by the way, though, we voted on something earlier, and I can't remember what it was. Yeah, we deleted something.
but we didn't, that didn't pass.
Right,
Yep,
right.
yep. So do you want to be the motioner or the seconder?
Well, wait a second. We already have a motion.
Yep, so I want to see if that wants to be canceled. So, Mary, would you like to withdraw your?
Yes, I would like to
prior
withdraw my prior motion.
Okay.
Okay, so I will make my motion.
Second.
Okay, so what we have on the floor now is, we have our section 10, we're retitling that as Children and Parents' Rights. We are keeping 10 as is and then inserting National 1.6 in its entirety as one consolidated section, okay? It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any further discussion on that? If not, all in favor, please say aye and keep your hand raised if you're an aye.
Aye.
Okay. Nays? It passes. That's more than 2/3. Thank you, Mary.
You're welcome.